Alright, so today we're looking at the Western Indians, and this is number one. So this is going to be Manifest Destiny all the way until the Indian removal. Right? So, first off, there existed a school of thought, and that was called Manifest Destiny. As we see here, there's the spirit of the West, and that's who that woman is supposed to be, carrying in her hand the laws and the greatness of America as people move west. Now, if you look closely in this picture, you'll actually see stagecoaches, and you'll see cattle drivers and covered wagons, and in the very back, you'll actually see a railroad, which is the real reason people went west, which was to make money. Okay. Now, there's actually a national monument that documents this move west, and that would be the Gateway Arch in St. Louis, Missouri. So that is there to contextualize is a big keyword you're going to hear a lot, and it means just put meaning to things about the Manifest Destiny. Now, there's a good video I'll show you in class. It will be stuck in your head for about 3 weeks called Elbow Room, again from the idea of the Schoolhouse Rock. Now, one of the major reasons people went west was, of course, to make it rich. Now, none of these bigger came than the California Gold Rush, which happened in 1849, which is why San Francisco are called the 49ers out of that gold rush era. And so people went west looking for profit. Now, if they found a vein, as it was called, it had little things, ores to mine, etc. Now, if you found a lot, it was called a lode. Now, the biggest and most profitable lode was in near modern-day Las Vegas, Nevada, and it is called the Comstock lode. And so this was the whole idea. It was a mining operation, millions of dollars in silver. And so maybe that's irony that people go and spend millions of dollars in Las Vegas today, but it all started back then as well. Now, also people went west to have space and to have land, and nothing bigger than the cattle drives. Now, they raised these from Texas, the Texas Longhorn and things like that, and they would drive the cattle up northward to meet the railroad lines that were being distributed, and they would be sent off to all the major cities so people could have the beef and things that they wanted to eat. Okay? Now, as they moved west, they had to encounter a great area. It's called the Great Plains. Now, on the Great Plains roamed a very unusual animal, and that is the American buffalo. And there you see it, correct? Now, the American buffalo is a great hindrance. Number one, it's very big. It can scare off cattle, and then also, if you're trying to build a railroad and you hit that, it's going to derail a train. That's a very large animal. So that's going to be something we're going to come back to in a minute as to what happens with that animal. Now, they also came in contact with Indians. Indians were dependent upon the buffalo, and as you can see there by the first picture of the man spanking the guy on the bottom, his name was Abraham Lincoln, and he was Senator Lincoln at this time. And Senator Lincoln proposed an idea called the Indian Removal Act. So they wanted to kick the Indians first off their land. They're going to move them to reservations, which we had at that time. Now, the ones who moved to the reservations became known as the 5 civilized tribes, and they're the ones that we tend to think of today: the Seminoles, the Creeks, the Cherokees, the Choctaws, and the Cheyenne. Now, what did they do with all this land? You can see there at the bottom, Indian land was now for sale, so you could go and purchase this land and have your own little slice of paradise. And so there's going to be conflict with that in a minute, and so we'll look at that in a little while. Right? Now, one of the most infamous removal policies was that of the Cherokee, and they did a horrible route. This route is now called the Trail of Tears. Number one, it was an arduous, very difficult journey, and then number two, people were sad to leave their possessions and everything behind that they had. So that was very difficult for them. Now, with all this new acreage they had, the U.S. government came up with a plan called the Homestead Act. Millions of acres of land, etc., and you could get tons of land through the Homestead Act for dirt cheap, provided you, A, paid $5 for it. We'll say it again, $5. That's it. And the next thing is you had to agree to live on it for a minimum of 5 to 6 years. And people go, yeah, we can do that. Now, the problem with this Homestead Act and all this land on the Great Plains is there are no trees. There's nothing to protect you from the element. This is very difficult. And so we're going to look at that also when we get into the farmers and how they basically got around this. Okay? Now, this was MTV Cribs for the time here. It was called a soddy. Well, naturally, you didn't have any timber, so you used what you had, and that was going to be, I'm trying to get the camera to follow me, that was going to be mud, dirt, and so you had a thing called a soddy. And yes, as you can see, that the animals would graze upon the soddy, and people worked the land, and that was what they lived in. Now, the down advantage, as you can clearly see, in the winter it's going to be very cold, in the summer it's going to be very hot, bugs, and just all kinds of things like that. And if it's fire, you're toast. I mean, there's no way around it. There's no escaping it. Lastly, there's a very famous Indian chief, one of the first ones we're going to talk about. His name is Chief Joseph. Now, Chief Joseph was in charge of a tribe called the Nez Perce, or the Nez Perce, depending on how you look at it. It actually means pierced noses. Chief Joseph, upon seeing the Trail of Tears and how people were traded, he actually uttered the phrase, "I will fight no more forever." And this is kind of the beginning of the end of how we see these things. Now, I had meant to put a song in here for you, but if you ever want to see a song, and one we're going to look at in class possibly, it's called "Don't Drink the Water" by Dave Matthews Band, and it kind of puts in perspective, and it's not necessarily about these Indians, but more about Columbus. But the whole idea that if you stay, I'm going to bury you, and your father's land is gone, it's given to me, and we'll look at some themes in that. All right, but that was the first video for the West and the Indians.